Typically in most games, during the tutorial, you'll get a variety of different items, armor, weapons, and whatnot to familiarize yourself with how things are going to work. All of these will then usually be replaced not long after finishing said tutorial, as you'll naturally come across better gear in due time. But what if that wasn't the case? What if you were stuck with the basics for your entire adventure? Could you win? Well, it's a question I've asked 3 times already, so what's once more? Can you beat Skyrim with only items from Helgen? Rules are very self-explanatory. Everything I use must be something I pick up in the intro section during the Helgen escape. That includes weapons, armor, spells, potions, food, lockpicks, etc, etc. The only exception I made for the rule was quest items, simply because I thought it would make things a bit more interesting. If I didn't, I'd just be rushing the main quest as I'd have nothing else to do. You may now be wondering about the length of the run, given it's a rather simple rule set. Well, let's just say this quickly went from being a video about trying to beat the game with the basics, to being a video about trying to make the Helgen gear into a somewhat viable build. I may have also gotten sidetracked, to say the least. All in due time. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. I won't be using any racial powers, but passives are fair game seeing as they're always active. Therefore, Breton was the way to go. Taking 25% less damage from any offensive spell is just absurdly strong, especially in the early game. Plus, it's probably going to be the only defense I have against magic users the whole run, so I need as much as I can get. I edit to make myself look like bootleg Ocelot crossed with Vignar Greymane, then name him Heller General. The joke there was that I'd have Helgen in my name, but it just sounds like I named myself after a hospital. Given what's going down, having one nearby wouldn't be the worst idea. After Alduin accidentally sets everything in motion, I run through until I can meet up with Hadvar again. I wasn't sure who would be best to side with here, so I just went with my gut. Once the binds are cut, I immediately dropped the prisoner rags. We clearly rode into town with them on, meaning they were not from Helgen. I then get to looting just about everything. Outside of random useless junk, I get 3 iron swords, some gold, wine, the key to get out, and a nearly full set of Imperial light armor minus the gloves. I find a worthy substitute in the next room as I dual wield the iron swords to cut through the 2 storm cloaks and get some fur gauntlets. Also get their armor and weapons, those being an iron great axe, an iron mace, and most importantly of all, a hide shield. Defense is going to be fine for now, but will fall off quickly once I start progressing through the game and leveling up. So having a shield for the extra armor, as well as a reliable way to interrupt enemies with its bash, would be a lifesaver if I build into it right. Finally for this area, I can get an iron war axe from Gunjar's corpse. I swipe some cabbages for my 5 a day before proceeding into the next room to deal with another 2 stormcloaks. Some more iron weapons and basic armor for my troubles, but best of all here is the small handful of potions up for grabs. As these are the only healing items outside of the odd piece of food that I might find here for the rest of the run, do not be surprised if I hold on to them for 90% of the playthrough. Next room I get some more gold as well as some lockpicks and other useless trinkets, with the only other things of note being the spark spell and mage robes. It'll be the only spell at my disposal, and while I have technically done that before, I won't be able to use an enchanting table to get the most out of it, but always handy to have in case of an emergency. There was also an iron shield here, but considering the rest of my armor's all light, I'd benefit more from sticking with the hide one. One of the stormcloaks has a bow, so I take it before then squishing the nearby spiders. I can extract some poison from them, which will be useful for getting some extra damage in tougher fights. Finally, before escaping, I make use of one of the longbows in the area to go full stealth archer on the bear. Again, useful, but as the arrows I have are limited, don't expect it to be my main method of dealing damage. I also took the pelt for seemingly no reason. Outside, and we now have all the gear that's going to see us from here until the end. That said, it is still a Skyrim run, so while I may not be able to loot anything bar quest items from here on out, that doesn't mean I still can't venture into random caves for experience. In fact, if anything, that's more important than ever if I want to squeeze as much potential out of this equipment as possible. Ember Shard is always a nice one to start off with. After all, you'll naturally come across it on your way to Riverwood, and it only has basic bandits inside, so no troubles here. I level up right away and take the 10 extra points of health, along with the first rank in Armsman for a 20% damage increase with one-handed weapons. While on the topic of leveling, I'm going to go over my game plan from here. Essentially, every level I am 9 out of 10 times taking the extra health. If/when the armor's defenses start to fall by the wayside, the plan is to simply tank with lots of health. As for perks, I will be focusing on 3 main skills. They are, in order of importance, one-handed, block, and light armor. One-handed and block go together, as like I said before, having more defense from the shield along with its bash just seemed like the way to go, and while it is less DPS than dual wielding, I think I'd prefer to have access to a quick interrupt, plus the other perks from the block tree. Light armor's obvious, it's all I got from Helgen, so it'll be getting worked on while I take damage throughout the run, and, when possible, I will toss a few perk points its way. There are 2 specific perks I'm working towards right now that I think will help the most in the long run. They are Elemental Protection, which will allow my shield to block 50% of fire, frost, or shock damage. This includes from enchanted weapons, spells, and most importantly of all, dragons. And then the other perk is Hack and Slash. This will allow one-handed axes to do a stackable bleed damage over time on top of the base damage they already inflict. It won't be much in the grand scheme of things, but in the end, more damage is more damage. It's just that simple. Have a ways to go before those become available, and as there is nothing of worth in Riverwood, I head straight for Bleak Falls Barrow as it's just more bandits and entry-level Draugr, so I know I won't be hassled. The only thing that gives me pause are the wolves and rats. There weren't any potions of cure disease in Helgen, so if I get down with the sickness, I'll be carrying it with me until the end. I'll level up again in here and start making my way down the block tree. Nothing incredible for now, it just lets the shield absorb more damage. Not enough to save me from the giant spider, mind you. This death isn't due to my low-level gear though, it's because I suck and forgot its poison would tear right through me. Fortunately, you can cheese it with magic and arrows from where you entered the room, as it can't fit through the door to go after you. Takes about a minute due to it running out of sight to avoid damage, but we managed to win the fight. I can then retrieve some of my arrows from its corpse before cutting down and through Arvel for the Golden Claw. Again, quest items are fine so long as I am not directly using them. So like, if I need to retrieve a sword for a character, that's all well and good so long as I don't actually use the sword. The rest of Bleak Falls is the same as ever, some normal Draugr re-killing, followed by taking out the ever so slightly stronger boss for the Dragonstone, all the while getting a few more levels under my belt. I return to Riverwood to hand over the claw to remove it from my inventory and get 400 gold for my efforts. As it is not from Helgen, I need to get rid of it. Problem is, you can't just drop gold on the ground, rather you need to find a nearby container to store it in and get rid of it that way. By no means difficult, just something I have to remember to do after the majority of side quests. I still want those perks, so the dragon that's about to burn down the city can wait while I go mercilessly kill more bandits. White River Watch, just across the bridge out of town, is a good place to start. It's short, with just enough fodder for some worthwhile gains. Sure enough, a few kills in, and the one-handed skill reaches level 30. Thanks to holding on to a perk point from a previous level up, I was able to take the first rank in Hack and Slash. Should have mentioned before, but yes, there are 3 ranks to this perk. Simple stuff, each one just increases the amount of bleeding damage you do. They're available every 30 levels of one-handed until 90, so it'll be quite some time before we get the most out of this. We do get to see it in action right away on the dungeon boss Iron Hand. As mentioned, it stacks, so the more hits the better. In certain circumstances, it means multiple light attacks could outdamage going for a heavy. It ignores armor as well, as you might expect, but best of all is that the bleed will apply through an enemy's block, so wheeling on their shield can still do decent damage in the long run, if I don't want to guard break them for whatever reason that is. All that in mind, it tears through the bandit leader. Good, but maybe not enough to get the point I'm trying to make across. So here's a better example. I fought 2 nearby trolls, and by applying multiple stacks of bleed, I was able to effectively counteract their natural health regeneration without fire or high base damage. Sure, I still need to cut away at them carefully, as they could still take me out in a few swings due to my low level, but that's where the shield bash comes in for the stun to stop them in their tracks. If I play carefully, I should be able to take down tougher foes a lot easier, even after far outpacing these iron weapons. Did some more bandit slaughtering, this time because I accidentally paid the toll, and even through murder could not get my gold back. Other than continuing to bleed them like stuffed pigs, the coolest thing that happened here was that I avoided an arrow by jumping over it. There was more spelunking in Darkshade not long after, more trolls, so I won't go over it too much. Fought them one at a time, and once more relied on bleed stacks to simplify the encounters. They hit hard enough that they're good for some easy block levels, I just need to not get too carried away lest they beat me senseless. Dealing with all the trolls made me feel like Mr. Big Balls, but one swift kick from a giant right in the gonads is enough to bring me back to reality, ironically. That said, I would not let it deter me. It's time to play smarter, not harder. Giants are big, lumbering, and while they may one-shot you anywhere from levels 1 to 10, their attacks are very well telegraphed and, like everything else, can be interrupted with a well-timed shield bash. So long as you have even a single point of stamina, you can perform a bash, so it was all about baiting out the attack, knocking them out of it, getting a few swings in, then backing off until the green bar stopped flashing before repeating the process. Giants don't heal like trolls, so the bleed was extra effective on them, even if I couldn't proc it as many times for safety reasons. A few cycles of this, and next thing you know, he was on his knees, and I got to witness a finisher that I don't think I've ever seen before. I continued travelling east looking for more things to best, so that I may become as strong as I see fit. Particularly, I wanted that elemental protection perk before I got to the point in the main story where dragons started spawning in. I felt like being able to just block half of all the damage they can do with their different elemental shouts seemed like a good idea. I slaughtered all manner of things, from bears and sabercats to witches and rats. Was going to take on another giant as well, but considering he is currently mourning the loss of his mammoth, I decided against it as I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I just culled more bandits up at Mistwatch. This particular band is part of a short side quest involving Krister here. He believes they kidnapped his wife, but he's no fighter, and he would like us to rescue her in his stead. Naturally, we continue to put axe to skull in an attempt to find a worthy opponent, but none of them stand out. That is all except their leader, who, surprise, is in fact the woman we were looking for. She was never kidnapped, but instead left of her own free will in search of a more interesting life, and in doing so, took over as chief of the group. She wishes for me to take her ring back to Krister and tell him she died and to forget about her. I agree! That being said, she is still a bandit, so she gets what's coming to her regardless. Returning to Krister with the ring, and I opt to tell him the truth about what went down. He reacts about as well as you'd think, as does his skull to my axe. To look at this in a glass half full kind of way, at least they may be reunited in Dawnguard? Anywho, I continue my unintentional conquest of the bandits of the east, and in doing so, hit level 10. Block still isn't quite high enough for the perk, but we're getting there. I did pick up quick reflexes at this stage though, which is definitely one of the more unique perks for the shield. If I block while an enemy is doing a power attack, everything slows down for a few seconds, giving me the option to easily move out of the way, or knock them out of it with a bash. While ransacking more tombs, I happen upon yet another distressed man. At the very least, Goldir here can defend himself. He says his aunt went into the family tomb to fight off a necromancer and he'd like some assistance. I agree, because I haven't got much else going on right now, plus I'm sure it's just Draugr, and how bad could it be? It's relatively smooth sailings. Draugr don't take bleed damage due to being undead, but they're still weak enough for the time, so it doesn't matter all that much. We find his aunt dead, by the way, and not long after encounter the Dark Elf Necromancer. I figured I'd be able to tank what came my way thanks to being a Breton, but I was sorely mistaken. His frost spells both hurt and slowed me down, making me very easy pickings for the horde of Draugr. Not helping matters is that he can resurrect each of them at least once, so really I need to deal with twice as many as it would seem. Oh, what of Goldir, you ask? Well, he got the wind taken out of him not long after rushing into the room, seeing as they all ganged up on him. The silver lining is he cannot die, so after crawling around a bit, he will jump back up for a few seconds to lend a hand before being promptly slapped down once more. Once I'm around half health, I retreat back the way we came and shut the door. This allows me to somewhat funnel the Draugr in one at a time and pick them off. Once I dealt with one, I would simply close the door and wait for the next to rush in. I'd also be very slowly regenning health while waiting like this, so it was a sound strategy. After a minute or so passes, I noticed none of them were coming to investigate. Turns out Goldir hopped back up, and after they gave him his lumps, they just lost all interest in me and stopped searching. So when I was healthy enough, I charged in to deal with another, and then after, got the attention of the Overlord and lured him back into the previous room. He's strong, but solid timing on guard breaks is enough to win most one-on-one encounters if you have the stamina to keep up the pressure. With him down, all that was left was Val's the Dark Elf, assuming he didn't res anybody else. Unlike the Draugr though, he wasn't trying to follow me in. In fact, he was so uninterested, I was able to wait and get fully restored. Granted, once I do, he pops in right in front of me. Without the help of his backup, he is mostly harmless, so I quickly burst him down before he gets the idea to reanimate the Overlord that's just lying next to us. With that, the day was saved and Goldir gives me some gold, which was promptly stored in the nearest receptacle. More exploring and I found a random door in the road, but I was not raised in a barn, so I made sure to close it before moving on. My travels brought me to Iverstead a lot sooner than I would have expected, so I figured for once I could help the town with their not ghostly ghost problem. Basically, a wizard has been using a potion to appear spectral to scare away the townsfolk. The irony here is he was taking it for so long he began to really think he was a ghost, so that's fun. The innkeeper then gives me the claw to make my way further into the barrow if I wish. I decided to do so, but I won't waste your time. It's the Skyrim special, Draugr and skeletons, followed by a slightly tougher one at the end guarding a treasure chest and dragon graffiti. On the plus side, level 11 is here, and I just take another rank in shield wall to absorb more damage. Back outside, and I just say screw it and make the climb up the mountain now so that I can just fast travel to the Greybeards when the time comes to blitz through the main quest. The usual frost troll menace is a pushover. My previous run-ins with his non-frosty brethren had prepared me for this. After reaching the top, I fast travelled back to Iverstead and began heading south this time. At this stage, I'm basically just throwing darts at a compass and going in whatever cardinal direction it lands closest to. Bandits, cats and bears, oh my, Froki's hunting quest I decided to try. Essentially, the quest has me travelling to different locations around the map to fight bigger, supposedly stronger, spectral versions of most of the common creatures. The first on the hit list are the wolf, the rat, and the mud crab. How riveting. Well, I head for the wolf first, as it sounds like the only one that could prove to be a challenge, as wolves can actually do something as opposed to the crabs and rats. That said, perhaps I spoke too soon. Let's just say, while all dogs may go to heaven, they seemingly do not come back any tougher. It gets put down in 2 swings, just like the rest of the pack. Crab would be next, and I head there on foot. Probably pretty obvious, but until I get to where I want to be level and perk-wise, I'm walking everywhere so I can encounter the most enemies possible. Also did Pine Watch. Bandit Leader was tougher than expected. Much tougher than expected, honestly. Giving her the run around the table ended up being an effective game plan, let me create distance for passive healing, while also allowing me to engage when needed and control the fight. I got the custom fit perk around here as well to make my armour a little more resilient. Honestly though, I don't think it matters much anymore. My only way to reliably tank hits is with more health. After, I make my way through Brittle Shin Pass, which allows me to get some easy block XP thanks to the skeletons. It's an easy jaunt. Outside, however, is a different story. Waltzed right into your Creation Club encounter, one which I am definitely underprepared for. It's the Saints side of the Saints and Seducers creation, where some bandits have somehow got their hands on Golden Saints and Dark Seducer arms and armours. They can take a lot of punishment and dish more out in response. The plan is to separate them, as I can somewhat reliably take them on one at a time. Should they group up on me though, then it's curtains. A few failed attempts at fighting them in close quarters later, and I remember that I do have a ranged alternative. The shock spell from the cell in Helgen. It's not the most powerful spell by any metric, but by rapidly mashing the triggers combined with abusing the Dragonborn's unique ability to jump, I can get myself into positions where it becomes difficult, if not outright impossible, for them to fight back while I fry their skin. Takes longer than I would have liked, but eventually I'm able to bring them down to just one, which I can finish off the old-fashioned way. With no more distractions, I can head towards the special mud crab, and at least, unlike the wolf, he is more unique. Much bigger than a normal mud crab for starters, plus he can take a hit. Praise stops there, mind you, as when he manages to land a pinch, it barely dents my health bar. Still a definite upgrade from the translucent blue wolf. All that leaves is the rat, but I figured I keep getting distracted from my main objective of reaching 50 block, so I make a point to buckle down and sort that out first. I head over to Halted Stream Camp. It's another run-of-the-mill bandit mine with a few on guard duty and even less inside. After wiping out his men, I take the time to let the orc chief batter my shield like a drum to start gaining more levels. I can't do this forever, as with no quick way to heal myself, he would realistically kill me eventually. It wouldn't be the first time where I thought I was outside of kill range before being subjected to the repeated headbutting finisher. Feeling big for my britches once more, I then went a little north and applied this same plan on a giant. Worked for a bit. After all, the sheer amount of damage they do makes for very fast block experience. That is, of course, also the biggest issue. However, doing this, I got to 49 before finishing him off. There's a fort close by, so I ran straight there and repeated the process of killing all but one of the bandits. A weak one this time, so I was less likely to die. As close as I was, I ended up getting the last bit of XP by smashing him in the face with a shield during the slow time effect. The second I saw that pop, I thanked and killed the bandit before finally acquiring the perk. Doesn't matter much, but I took the time to clear out the rest of the bandits before making my way to exercise the ghost rat. Not much to say on this one, not due to him doing no damage or being weak, but because he fell right out of the map and died in the void. I love you, Skyrim. Well, if the game's gonna break accidentally, I may as well minorly break it intentionally. I know I said I wouldn't do this again, but being able to grab the Elder Scroll by quite literally using the items I got from Helgen to open the gate to the lift was too good of an opportunity to pass up. I of course made a very quick trip over to Septimus to grab the cube so that I could actually activate the device and grab the scroll. Back to what's important, finishing Froki's quest. It's not over yet, as now we can hunt the bear, mammoth and sabercat. I go from hardest to easiest again, so I start with the mammoth. Getting up close and personal is almost a guaranteed death sentence, so instead I took advantage of their notoriously bad pathing, along with a shock spell to win the fight from a safe distance. Next up was the cat, which didn't manage to claw me even once. The slow time perk with the shield proccing on just about every single hit allowed me to easily bash to avoid damage. The cat itself also just wasn't all that aggressive upon reviewing the footage. It kept just swinging at the air a lot for whatever reason. Regardless, that's 2 down and 1 more to go. I figured the bear would be the simplest, as after all, out of the 3's normal counterparts, that would typically be the case. Well, turns out the bear was incredibly aggressive and would have very much killed me if I hadn't been saving a level for dire situations such as this. For those that don't know or simply may have forgotten, leveling up fully heals the player, so it's always handy to save your levels for sticky situations like these. Well, after suddenly getting my second wind, the bear is no match for the follow-up, and he is put down like the others. Returning to the old man, he informs me one final challenge remains, and it's none other than the troll. I think I've fought enough of these up to this point that it shouldn't come as a surprise that I wiped the floor with it in record time. Granted, this was probably supposed to be a lot tougher, as you find it in the same cave where I fought the first 2 trolls near the beginning of the run. So realistically, this should have been a 3v1. Ah well. Froki's bow is also in this cave, but if you take it back to him, he just tells you to keep it, so no extra rewards or anything. Speaking of compensation, for doing all of this, you get an enchanted necklace that reduces damage from animals by 10% and increases bow damage by 5%. It's neat, but not from Helgen, so I immediately drop it and go about my business. Okay, well I have the perk that I always wanted, so I figured it was high time I did some of the main quest. So to that end, it's off to Whiterun to finally get rid of this stone and start contending with some dragons. I should also mention I got the 2nd rank in hack and slash for more bleed damage, not that it's all that noticeable. Anyway, the dragon. In terms of my own damage output, it's kind of hard to say as I have the backup of the Whiterun guard pelting it with arrows non-stop. But being able to break him out of just about every bite or breath attack with the shield, so long as I have the stamina, is strong enough on its own. But, most importantly, how good is that elemental protection perk I spent all this time grinding for? Well, see for yourself. His breath attacks now barely tickle me. Keep in mind that I am blocking 50% of the damage with the shield up, as well as taking 25% less damage from it, thanks to my innate resistance to magic as a Breton. That is good, this is what we want, turning the tutorial gear into a somewhat effective tank build with the right perks and setup. With his metal tested and nothing left to gain, we take him out, absorb the soul, then get told to go meet with the Greybeards. Thought about it, but you know what I ended up doing instead? The Civil War questline. No rhyme or reason as to why, just figured I could. I sided with the Empire, seeing as I've been repping their colours for the entire run thus far. Initiation is determined by slaughtering a whole fort of bandits by my lonesome, so I go about and do that. I've accomplished this a few times already for fun, so what's once more, I suppose. Due to all the one-handed levels and perks obtained up until now, the Iron War Axe now does 19 damage per swing, if you're curious. Not the best, but far from worthless. Cuts through the bandits with ease, so that's all that matters to me at this moment. Once the fort is ours, we get sworn in, then run off with Rikka to hunt down the Jagged Crown. Stormcloaks may as well be recolored basic bandits with how much health they have, so no troubles here. Deeper in, it gets all Skyrim on us and the Draugr come out in full force. It would have been wise to switch to the mace, seeing as they don't take bleed, but the thought slipped my mind. Worse still, the Death Lord at the end has a disarm shout, so I ended up spending most of that encounter crawling around the floor just looking for my weapon. By the time I found it again, the Legate and her men had already beaten him halfway back to the afterlife. I was just there to seal the deal, really. You know, I've played so much New Vegas, it feels weird to refer to someone who goes by the Legate as a friendly. Anyway, I hand over the crown to Tullius, and judging by his enthusiasm at its retrieval, I'm sure he cannot wait to use it as a paperweight. Next task is to head back to Whiterun and see if we need to spruce up its defences or burn its walls. Fortunately for the Jarl, it's the former, so after delivering and returning an axe that was not mine, it's time to defend the city. Strength in numbers is very much real here, as it was death by 1,000 cuts from the Stormcloak's assault. Upside to my pitiful damage is they tend to not pay me much mind and would much rather focus on my allies. I got some more use from shock here, which is always nice. Like the Golden Saints, it helps me keep my distance while avoiding death by aggressive acupuncture. We failed to defend the gate, but that does not appear to mount to much in the long run, as few of them seem to rush in, seeing as they have been stopped in their tracks by a waist-high fence. While dealing with them, we end up winning the fight, to which I then commit war crimes by taking out some of the fleeing soldiers. I then sit around for the speech before telling the general we won the day. Once more, he showers us with promotions and randomly generated magical loot, which we drop, before then sending us back out to take more forts. On my way to be a good little soldier, I make a point to fight another dragon. I just wanted to make sure I could suck up as much punishment as I thought, and it wasn't just because the last one was the first dragon encounter. Glad to say this one too may as well have just been a slight breeze. It's important to note I'm also level 20 now, and with everything in health, I can take some strong hits regardless of whether my shield is up. Case in point, I fought another troll during my tour for the Imperial Legion, and even with him landing multiple hits, I still had more than enough health that I was never concerned about being bested. With that in mind, I'm just going to skim over the rest of the Civil War questline. It's typically something you do very early on, and seeing as I don't think the opposing forces level with the player all that much, I proceed to just steamroll a lot of their forts from here until the end. Sure, there was like maybe 1 or 2 close calls if I let myself get surrounded, but nothing particularly out of the ordinary. By far the most difficult encounter wasn't even part of the war, it was when I stumbled into the Dark Seducer LARPing bandits. I was better prepared than I was for their saintly counterparts, but even where I am now, they still gave me a run for my septums. Only reason I came out on top was because their archer decided to switch to a substantially weaker dagger instead, allowing me to stand my ground and win the fight. The final fight with Ulfric and Galmar was laughably easy, by the way. I did get a good laugh out of Ulfric using unrelenting force on Tullius though, and just watching him awkwardly slide across the carpet. After delivering the killing blow to the Jarl of Windhelm, I expertly posed his and Galmar's bodies so they would look just like they drifted off to sleep. With zero sense of direction, you'd think now would finally be the time to pay the Greybeards a visit. You'd be wrong. Instead, I went back to Helgen. It's infested with bandits now, and I felt given my namesake, clearing them out would be the right thing to do. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Hey, couldn't you get new weapons and armor here, seeing as the items these bandits have are technically from Helgen? And yeah, you would be right. From a certain point of view, their gear would be viable. But here is why I am not going to do that. Nothing would stop me from just leaving, waiting a few days, then returning to wipe out the bandits once they respawned, and continuing to do so until some powerful high-level enchanted armor or weapons spawn in as well. I feel like that would remove the fun of trying to make something out of nothing like I've been doing so far with the run. So yes, while I could take these, and let's be real, I should take these, I am being incredibly stubborn and choosing not to. Don't know how or why, but after this, I ended up murdering Grella the Kind so that I could get kidnapped by Astrid, kill her as well, and then begin the purge of the Dark Brotherhood. You know, all of the family members have a good chunk of health and hit decently hard. If they weren't spread out in different rooms among the Sanctuary and attacked you at the same time, this might prove to be a challenge. Alas, that is not the case, so after dulling my axe some more, I can unintentionally complete the Rite of Purification. For doing all of this, I reached level 21 and dropped yet another point into Shield Wall for more protection. A good thing too, because after this I wandered into Fort Dawnguard like a lost puppy and got recruited into yet another war, this time against vampires. The problem in this is that vampires are obviously classified as undead, so all this bleed damage I've been working towards is now pointless. Their armor is typically not that strong either, they just have naturally high health and defenses, so even switching to the mace for its perk that ignores armor would not do that much better. For the most part, it's not too bad. The first couple I come across go down easily enough. That said, hunting vampires with axes is kind of half of this channel's gimmick, so I shouldn't be too surprised. It only got dicey in the puzzle room as Lokiel and his backup were too much to deal with. Trying to juggle 3 of them wasn't working out well, considering they would also be draining my health, and due to my less than stellar damage, it took longer than normal to take out even one of them. Second go around and I attempted stealth, but as I have been neglecting the skill, I am spotted right away. I rushed the blooded vampire, as honestly, they were the toughest one here. It's close, very close, but I just barely managed to squeak out the win. On her. Lokiel and the Thrall are still very much alive and about to do me in. Without really thinking, I just dove off the side into the water. This turned out to be the best possible outcome. Even though there's an easy path they can follow to get down here, neither of them chose to do so, and after about a minute, they gave up on searching for me and went back to just standing around. I then slowly made my way back to land, went back into stealth, and once I was far enough away from them, gained the ability to wait and get back to full. I then charged down Lokiel to stop his life-sucking shenanigans, and once he went down, briefly toyed with the Thrall by demonstrating my Ultra Instinct powers before snuffing him out too. I then did the Connect the Dots puzzle to be rewarded with my new vampire BFF. All that stood between us and the outdoors that would melt the flesh from her bones was a couple of gargoyles and some Draugr. I'd like to pretend I was useful here, but she did most of the work. Once done, I deliver Serana to her father, who gives the tip of don't eat yellow snow because he likes to think he's very original. Skulking back to Isran, I tell him that not only are things bad, but worse than he could possibly imagine, given that the vampires also have an Elder Scroll now. He's pissed, naturally, but that doesn't stop him from still making us do all the work, almost like we're the main character or something. All he wants for now is to recruit 2 of his old Dawnguard members, Gunmar and Soreen. Barely worth typing these recruitments out, they're that simple. Gunmar just needs you to help him kill a cave bear, and Soreen requires you to find a Dwemer gyro, or get the one from her lost backpack, which is about 15 feet away. Back again to the fort, and whoops, guess who got infected by vampirism while rescuing Serana? Alright, so I have 2 options. Stay a vampire and stop the Dawnguard questline, or find a way to get it cured. Well, I don't have enough money from Helgen to buy a black soul gem for the cure, so that's out. That leaves only one other option, becoming a werewolf. I mulled it over for a bit and decided becoming a werewolf was the best option. Being a vampire, even like so, gives both buffs and debuffs, whereas being a werewolf, while yes, gives you the transformation, the only hindrance is you cannot get the well-rested bonus anymore. Plus, as a werewolf, I can simply choose to just not activate the power, meaning outside of getting to continue this DLC, all I'm getting out of this is my guy will now be perpetually tired. First things first, I need to join the companions. You know, I genuinely thought for a moment that I wouldn't be able to hit Vilkas hard enough to proceed. Bleed comes in clutch once more, it seems. After delivering a few items back and forth, as well as some Radiant quests, we get sent on our first proper mission with Farkas, where we do, what else, but clear out some Draugr. Alright, well we are technically looking for a piece of their magical axe Wuthrad, but semantics. Of course, during this whole thing, Farkas decides to only flex his furry legs once during the encounter with the Silverhand, and never again while they continue to hound us throughout the dungeon. Also, considering I am a vampire and their silver swords do extra damage to the undead, they hit like a truck. Fortunately, Farkas makes an effective meat shield while I go crazy with the axe. I go so crazy in fact, I level up and grab the final rank in Armsman. That's pretty much the limit of what we can do, so 22 damage is more than likely the max we must work with from here on out. Pushing on to the final room, as it was just more Draugr, I figured it was better late than never to get some time in with the 2-handed weapons. I'm not planning to pivot into a hammer build or anything this late into the run, but as my 3 main skills are taking a while to gain levels, I thought it would be wise to work on this and help me level up faster. It gets a little rough once Farkas goes down, so I decide to play it safe and switch over to the mace. I got the first rank in Bonebreaker, plus the mace does 25 damage per hit, making it better than the axe for now. It easily batters their remaining dusty bones, allowing the 2 of us to return for my initiation ceremony. Nothing too special after the fact, as I am sent to hunt down a random criminal in the ass end of nowhere. I even had a little assistance from one of the locals, which was much appreciated. With that, I have somehow proved my worth to the point where I am allowed to join the secret clubhouse and activate my persona. As you are forced into this first transformation, I just chose to stand still and wait until it was over, so I wasn't technically using the power. We wake up in a random snowy area, which realistically could be anywhere, but thankfully Ayala is here to assist as she leads us to a nearby Silverhand fort that we need to clear out. Now that I'm no longer a vampire, I take nowhere near as much damage from their swords, so this is a cakewalk by comparison to what we just went through. Perscure didn't make it though, darn shame. Now who will send me on repetitive Radiant quests to kill nameless criminals? With them cleared out, we can get back to what's really important, hunting vampires. Or for this brief moment, talking with vampires as Serana is at the fort looking to chat. She tells us more about Daddy Dearest and the Elder Scroll, so we set off to find the Moth Priest that just so happened to be visiting the land recently. He's up near Dragon's Bridge, which is really living up to its namesake given what attacks us when we arrive. Not to worry though, as Serana hits the thing with enough ice spikes to the point where it begins to defy the laws of physics. At the cave where the vampires have dragged the priest off to, I'm going to say this one last time, but having Serana glued to your hip for this DLC trivializes most of it. Her frost spells hit very hard, and unlike most followers, she can keep herself healthy thanks to Vampiric Drain. Now that's not to say I still don't pull my weight, I do, it's just that unless they all decide to ignore her for whatever reason, I'm usually a-okay. Dexian in his mind-controlled state tries to fight us, but even before losing his eyesight he isn't much of a fighter. We add him to our family back at the castle and force him to read the paper that makes you blind. Next we head back to Serana's house to find her mother, who is in the pocket dimension hidden in the basement. Dawnguard added stronger skeletons into the mix, which was nice, seeing as in every other Elder Scrolls they could be rather strong, whereas in Skyrim they would fall apart if you glared at them hard enough. Mace is out in full force for now, as just about everything for the next hour or so is classified as undead, so the axe would just be slowing me down. Nothing too taxing for the time, so after sweeping them aside we can get inside, follow some instructions, and open a portal to the soul cairn. Can't enter as is, so the options are to get partially soul trapped, which will weaken me while in the cairn, or be turned into a vampire once more. Not going through that again, so getting soul sucked it is. This means my health, magicka, and stamina will all be reduced by 45 points until I get to leave. To that end, I see about getting through this as fast as feasibly possible. We need to track down the 3 keepers and kill them to shut down the barrier that'll let us reach Serana's mother as well as the scroll. Okay, I'll be honest, I don't remember much of my travels through here as I had a bad headache around the time of recording, and to soothe that I took some Kokotamol. Perhaps too high of a dose, shall we say. Had to rewatch my encounters with the keepers to see how they went, only the first one gave me issues, although I chalked that up to Serana just not being present for my first attempt. I was also wasting all of my stamina on being defensive rather than making use of power attacks. That said, I have much less stamina to work with due to missing half my soul, but I digress. With the barrier down, we can make it inside for the Durnavir boss fight. I've probably said this before, but I like how it's at least slightly more unique than your typical dragon encounter, what with him retreating after you inflict enough damage and him summoning in the Bone and Wrath men to keep you busy. Although, I think we may have skipped a few of those phases as Serana and Valerica kept hitting him with frost spells right as he was trying to take off, which kept causing him to land a few seconds after. He's also rather squishy, more so than those keepers we just fought through, I think. With him out of the picture, for like 30 seconds we get the second, but really third scroll, befriend the dragon, then return with the good news, only to be met with Dexion's worst Kenshi cosplay. Thankfully, with the power of Ex Machina Moth technology, we can just read the scrolls to find out where we need to go without losing our eyesight. Sorry, Dexion. On our way out of the glade, we are attacked by a small band of vampires. Typically, wouldn't bother mentioning this, as truthfully, this is not the first time a random group of them has attacked me on my travels. But for some reason, these ones in particular were a problem. Could be due to them all being grouped up, but it just felt like they hit harder and were overall more aggressive than normal. I only survived this in the end because for some reason the game took pity on me, and when I reloaded the final time after the third death, they did not all rush me at once. Instead, this time the Master and Blooded Vampire were waiting by the cave entrance. This made the whole ordeal much more manageable. Also helping was that since I took out the gargoyle first, Serana was able to reanimate it to our side, which helped split aggro. All that leaves is doing the way shrines and tracking down the bow we aren't allowed to use. Silver lining is it's mostly Falmer and their like, so I can briefly switch back to the axe for a bit of that extra DOT. Seeing as I went through the back entrance to Blackreach, this makes this my first encounter with the Falmer this run. Basic weapons or not, I'm pushing level 30, so I have the strength and health to easily go toe to toe with a group of them. Only real annoyances are if any of them have poisoned weapons, or if I get caught with a stray ice spike, as getting slowed is never enjoyable. I always spend longer than necessary in the initial cave section, as no matter how many times I go through this, I never seem to remember where to go. Honestly, the same goes for this section outside near the end, when you have to make your way up the little block of Falmer flats. At least once we collect all the water and pour it into the Arch-Curate's doorstep, the next set of enemies we must contend with are even easier. Which is odd, you'd think with them introducing a new enemy type, even if it is just a reskin like these frozen variants, that they'd make them stronger than their base game counterparts, but no. Hell, the frozen cores are remarkably brittle compared to the original. Not to worry, the game pulls no punches with the fight against the Arch-Curate. First go, I rush him as soon as I'm able and get to smashing and bashing. He summons Frost Atronachs during the fight, but they were preoccupied with Serana, so the plan was that she could deal with them while I quickly tear through the boss. Problem being, you guessed it, my damage and defenses. Not helping matters is that he's a vampire, so whenever he's low on health, Vampiric Drain comes out and starts easily undoing my hard work. Worst of all is that he has a Frost Cloak spell active almost all the time, so even just standing next to him is eating away at me. Despite all of this, I was able to get him down to a third before he finished me off. His Ice Spike spell that he hits me with is just far too powerful for me to tank. Next try, I helped with the Atronach in the hopes that Serana would be his focus, but he was having none of it and impaled me with the icicle yet again. Third try was the same plan as before, only it went much worse for some reason, and he just killed me faster. Attempts 4 and 5 had the same idea in mind, but could not have played out more differently if I tried. Focus the summon again and let Serana take the lead on the Arch-Curate, hoping that she could maybe get him down to just above half health before allowing me to swoop in. Tough luck, I'm afraid, as he ended up switching off to a shock spell here that two-shot her. Attempting to stay back and wait for her to get back up was meaningless because as soon as she did, he'd just zap her again. I am then picked off shortly after. Fifth go at this, and after focusing the summon, Serana charges in, and I was expecting a similar result, but remember, these games are put together in a way that, for good or ill, nothing ever pans out the same way twice. For instance, this time, for some unknown reason, Vurthur just chose to only use the Vampiric Drain spell on Serana for the first 10 to 15 seconds or so, allowing both me and her to do a lot of damage. He gets wise to this eventually, and is also still using the Frost Cloak, so Serana does bite it. Right before he turns to face me, I apply one of those poisons I got from the spiders back in Helgen, as well as chug my only stamina potion. Yes, I was still too stubborn at this point to drink a health potion despite how things were going. I then used that stamina I just got to shield bash him, momentarily stunning him to get in some hits. After, I begin moving from side to side while swinging in an attempt to avoid what is about to come my way. But, by sheer dumb luck, right as he is about to let off a shock spell that would have 100% disintegrated me, I managed to get him low enough that I trigger a finisher and stop him before that happens. Whew, I did not expect him to put up that much of a fight. I can't recall ever having trouble with him in the past. What's even more bizarre is that he was miles tougher than what came next. Yes, I am referring to Helgen. His magic isn't all that special. Again, he spends the majority of the fight using Vampiric Drain, which, while annoying in that it heals him, it barely tickles me at the same time. He will occasionally fire off the Vampire Lord's unique health-sucking explosion spell, and that one is certainly deadlier, but still nowhere near as strong as the frost magic from Vurthur. What makes this even easier still is that he will sometimes switch to melee mode and start swiping at me. Let's just say he has not put a single point into his melee skills if you catch my meaning. When he's in this mode, it was viable for me to just stand my ground and smack away at his health. Sure, we don't have Auriel's bow for this, but all that means is it becomes a little more tedious as he regenerates back up to full health about 3 times, as well as raising the nearby skeletons and spawning gargoyles. Kind of works in our favour actually, as once more, Serana can just reanimate them to our side. All in all, much easier than expected. Didn't need to pop any potions, and never once came close to dying. That ends the Dawnguard DLC, allowing me to drop the bow and figuring out what will distract me next. Figured now that I don't have to worry about getting vampirism anymore, I could go and cure my lycanthropy, so quickly go see about sorting that out. What I am saying is I then ran through the rest of the companion's questline. It was just a lot of going to tombs, caves and forts, and then killing either specifically marked creatures, or Silverhand if it was a mission that progressed the questline. Sure, there is a brief change of scenery when you need to go witch hunting for severed heads, but still fundamentally the same as all their other tasks. 2 main things of note happened during these adventures. First off, I met a friendly dragon. I was using a giant to get a few extra block levels, and once I killed him, the dragon popped down to tell me I did a good job. I gave him a little boop on his snoot as we have the innate desire to do so, then after helping him kill a nearby cat, we said our farewells, and he seemingly flew off to High Hrothgar to go have tea and crumpets with Parthenax. And then secondly, during the purging of the final members of the Silverhand, I increased my one-handed to 90, allowing me to grab the final level in Hack and Slash for maximum bleed damage. Again, might not be able to tell the difference from a glance, but I at least know I am doing more damage, so that's something. Anywho, to wrap this up, I fight both Codlax and my Spirit Wolves, so we can be cured of the wolf disease, allowing me to finally obtain a good night's rest. Alright, so now it is time to go back to the main story, for a grand total of 10 minutes before being sidetracked once more. I just did the shout training with the Greybeards and then failed to retrieve the special drinking horn. Don't think I need to tell you, but I am very over-leveled for the main quest by this stage. I'm level 26 for goodness sake. Typically you'd be around level 6 or 7 for this quest. On my way to meet Delphine, I got accosted by Mirak's men and figured, you know what, why the hell not, trip to Solstheim. Lacked the funds for the boat ride, but thanks to passing a speech check, I'm able to get a free cruise. We arrive in Ravenrock, and this is where things fucked up. No, it's not that the DLC was difficult, it was about on par with Dawnguard to be honest. Might not have Serana with you, but the 2 quests where being alone could have proved dangerous, the game gives you the assistance of Freya and Neloth. Freya is a DPS dual-wielding machine, whereas Neloth is very clearly just a Sith Lord in disguise. Also, travelling through the Black Books is entirely a non-issue because you cannot die while in them. If your health drops to 0, you just get spat back out into the real world, allowing you to rest up and try again. So then, what is the problem? The problem is that the recording for 90% of my time in Solstheim, pretty much everything except the Mirak fight, got corrupted. The footage I have been showing was me loading back and replaying it for the second time just so I had something to put over this. It is very annoying, but such is the way of things. My second recording of it was mostly the same. The only thing I didn't do this go around was side with the Reeklings, so I don't have any relevant footage for that. Probably wasn't going to spend much time talking about the lead up to Miraak anyway, but I would have preferred to have the choice, if that makes sense. So, how was the Dragonborn showdown? Well, first off, I can bleed him, which is very nice, but by now I also maxed out the Bonebreaker skill, meaning maces ignore 75% of armor. Not quite sure which is better for the fight, so I ran attempts with both. Yeah, attempts. Unlike Harkon, Miraak can lay on the damage, particularly his weird tentacle sword. His spells I can mostly deal with if I block them. I also made sure to save a level for this for the full restore, which was needed. But here's the thing. While he hits hard with the sword, his spells and shouts can be easily blocked, avoided, or in some situations, outright tanked. Not helping matters for him was after I used and abused that level up, I took the Block Runner perk. Now, I have never used this before, so I assumed it just let you move a little bit faster with the shield. I was unaware it let you move at full speed with it raised. This kind of broke the difficulty of the fight, to be honest. Yeah, elemental protection has been a lifesaver for negating magical damage, but its downside was I still had to walk slowly towards casters with it up. Now, I can just run towards them and close the gap in no time. This does not bode well for Miraak, as you can imagine. The game plan was to save all of my stamina for power bashes. It's like a normal shield bash, only stronger, and I think it staggers them for longer, honestly not quite sure. It allows free damage on Miraak and seemingly stops him from switching to his sword. This meant that he was mostly just using the staff and kept trying to put some distance between us. The bad part about him doing that is when he's mage mode and trying to pelt you with spells, he seems to refuse to advance, so if I was injured I could just stand behind one of the many piles of books until I regained my health, and then get back to the fight. I had a little assistance this fight as the dragon I had to ride in on occasionally spits ice at Miraak until he stole its soul. Now I can't remember it doing this in the past. I think it could have something to do with the fact I attacked Miraak as soon as I touched down rather than letting him talk. On to our final clash, and it was very underwhelming. He just proceeded to sit there and let the beating happen. I mean, he tried to block the mace with a ward spell, but sadly for him, that's just not how that works. Once his health drops to almost zero, he whirlwind sprints away, only to get sucked into the tar pits and promptly skewered by his master. I won't judge, some people are into that. For completing Dragonborn, I am given the black book that allows me to respec my skill trees. Not entirely useful, seeing how making skills legendary is a thing, but cool nonetheless, I suppose. Alrighty, all that leaves is the main quest, and I mean, come on. A basic dragon, low-level Thalmor, and Draugr is what makes up most of what I have left to fight. The only encounters of worth take place in the last 30 minutes or so, and even those are a breeze today. You all know by now I consider the first fight with Alduin to be the toughest fight in the base game when it comes to these runs. He's always scaled to be a higher level than the player, and there isn't much room to maneuver around the arena you fight him in. Well, he did not beat me even once today. I simply placed myself behind him and hacked away at his ankles with the axe as he does take bleed damage, then either blocked or shield bashed him out of his melee attacks. I also did this to stop him from trying to turn around and use his shouts on me, even though I probably could have blocked them too. Soon was my next major test after this, seeing as I finished the Civil War questline, and therefore didn't have to worry about passing away from boredom during the Peace Council. He gets the best of me in the first try. You'd think I'd know better than to try blocking him, but you'd be mistaken. Doubly so when you consider I could have easily just moved out of the way thanks to the slow time perk, but whatever. Attempt 2 and I just keep up the assault, and for the first time in a long time choose to stagger with heavy attacks rather than always relying on the shield. The bleed does its thing and stops him in his tracks when he was going to go for a heavy swing. All that remains is Alduin round 2. Yeah, alright. I'm not even going to pretend this is ever difficult. Ignore what my health bar is telling you. I simply took one too many raining fireballs to the face. With that, the story is anticlimactically concluded, finishing the game and proving yes, you can indeed beat Skyrim with only items from Helgen. I think it's fair to say I almost got more sidetracked in this one than the video I did a few months back about literally getting distracted. Couldn't help it, I had a lot of fun and genuinely wanted to see just how much the build could do. I don't think I'd consider it a good one by any stretch of the imagination, but it was able to get the job done despite everything, and I think that's wonderful. So remember, the next time your friend who has played way too much Skyrim tells you to get better gear, send him to this video to show him the tutorial quite literally gives you everything you will ever need for a full playthrough. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see y'all in the next video.